There is this pitting for the OPS to take power tariff hike protest to the president. Are you hearing any news of some gathering anywhere around the city center there? Of course, we're seeing several controversies brew with regards to the recent removal of electricity subsidy. We don't know. I think that would take me to part of my first question. Has this subsidy been removed from electricity? The last I remember this conversation is Mr. President was saying we cannot remove that subsidy because it was going to be pushing Nigerians further down into the magma of challenges that we have.
Yes, so first of all, I'm not here in the city center, so I'm unable to give you a situation report.
Okay.
Next time, perhaps, if you want, I can go to the city center and report there for you. I'm happy to do that for you as my own service to national development.
Thank you so much
for your effort. Yeah, so I plan to be in the city center, but it's later in the day.
Okay.
Perhaps if I see anything, I can dial in and give you a live report.
All right, thank you.
Now on the tariff report, on the tariff increase, it's really unfortunate that Nigerians are being made to bear this hike in tariffs. Let's not forget that Nigerians are already going through a lot. We have inflation that's hitting so hard, food inflation especially. Bag of rice that was like 18,000 some months ago, now it's in the neighborhood of 60 to 70,000. A loaf of bread is over 1,000 naira. Then it means someone on minimum wage of 30,000 cannot afford a loaf of bread per day for their family. I mean, if you want to buy a loaf of bread, you're going to spend more than minimum wage, and the family needs more than a loaf of bread. So that is how difficult the situation with Nigerians is, and this is resultant from the policies that this current government has implemented, beginning with the removal of petrol subsidies, which means transportation costs have increased, workers going to work are experiencing extreme increases in transportation costs, and even businesses who are experiencing higher energy costs, are transferring those costs into the prices of the goods and services that they provide. Forest unification also impacted negatively on Nigerians because we're importing a lot of stuff. And once the dollar now is over 1,000 naira, that's translating into the prices of imported items. Increases in interest rates is another one. Of course, businesses are facing higher costs, through higher cost of borrowing, which they will transfer into prices. And then we'll talk about this electricity tariff. For me, this electricity tariff is not necessary. Nigerians are being made to pay for the inefficiencies in the system. So it will be better for government to deal with the inefficiencies so that the cost will be reduced instead of forcing Nigerians to pay the high cost as being generated by an inefficient system. So those are my preliminary views on the tariff hike.
Okay, you mentioned inefficiencies. What could these inefficiencies be? Because you said Nigerians are being made to pay too much for electricity due to inefficiencies on the side of the government. What inefficiencies do you mean?
So these inefficiencies are coming from government taking part in the generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity in Nigeria. If I draw our viewers' minds back to the NITEL days, so NITEL was a Nigerian telecommunications company. It used to be the only company that provided telephones for Nigeria. For those who are old enough, we know about this. And because it was a government-run company, the usual inefficiencies you see in government. And when I talk about these inefficiencies in government, I'm not only referring to Nigeria. Globally, government is not a good businessman. Government does not know how to do business. So anytime government is in business, you find out that the government doesn't run the business efficiently in terms of ensuring that costs are lowest and the output is highest, which business people are concerned with. You know, so if I just talk about Nitel as a government company providing telephones, these were the usual stories that you will hear. The explanations, the Minister of Telecommunication then addressing Nigeria, just like the Minister of Power is doing now. To an extent, the Minister of Telecommunications then said telephone was not for the poor. Why? Because of the high cost of telephones that Nitel as a government company was providing. And basically the reason for the high cost of telephones was that Nitel was not providing enough telephone lines for Nigerians. And once there is a short supply of any commodity, the price will rise.
Okay.
Now, when government stepped out and private sector came in, the MTN, the Airtel, the Glos, and Co came in, they started to run telephone like a business. And that is why today we have almost 200 million lines, active lines of telephone supply to Nigerians at a fraction of the cost that Nitel was doing. This is precisely what is happening in the power sector today. The government isn't providing enough power, and so it is expensive. And if government should step away, just like they did in the telecoms, the private sector will come in, take this power sector, run it like a business, and generate enough electricity for Nigeria. And what I mean, we are not generating enough electricity. I can give you some statistics. For instance, if we look at South Africa, which is an African economy, the population of South Africa is about 60 million. And they are generating and supplying 58,000 megawatts of electricity. 58,000, right? So that's an African economy. We can look at a gas economy like Qatar. They have gas, like Nigeria has gas. They are just 2.8 million in population. They are generating and supplying 12,000 megawatts, right? That's almost like 4,000 megawatts per 1 million people in Qatar. We can look at Brazil that has 200 million people just like us. They are generating and supplying 180,000 megawatts per day to 200 million people. I mean, you look at one of the world's most populous nations, India. There are 1.4 billion people. They are generating and supplying 400,000 megawatts of electricity per day. And I mean, if you want to look at an advanced economy, which we definitely can compare ourselves to, but just for the purpose of for the records, an economy like the UK, an advanced economy with a population of about 65 million people, they are generating and supplying 730,000 megawatts. So now, how many megawatts is Nigeria supplying to 200 million people? It's between 3,000 to 4,000 megawatts. You understand?
Yeah.
So when I'm talking about Brazil, 180,000, Nigeria, 3,000 to 4,000 megawatts, you can clearly see that the electricity supply in Nigeria is so small, and all the costs that are being gathered by the entire electricity players in Nigeria, which is the generating companies, the transmission company, the distribution companies, companies like MBET that were bettered by privatization, and all of that, are all trying to recover their money from 3,000 megawatts. Now you will realize that the 3,000 megawatts is going to be very expensive to generate the revenue for all these companies to recover their costs. If the megawatts increase to even 10,000, you will find out that the unit cost will start falling, because then they will be trying to recover their costs from 10,000, so they will be able to make more money, you know. But ideally, Nigeria should be supplying at least like 100,000 megawatts of electricity. So it is actually very painful to sit down and analyze that Nigeria is generating 3,000 to 4,000 for 200 million people. You know, what this means is that we have 36 states in Nigeria and the FCT. So that is 37 units. if you divide 3,000 megawatts by 37, it's about 80 megawatts. We're giving 80 megawatts on average to a state. A whole state, 80 megawatts. And you know, all states in Nigeria are more than Qatar in population. Because Qatar is just 2.8 million. And every state in Nigeria is more than 2.8 million population. When Qatar is giving 12,000 megawatts to 2.8 million people, we were giving 80 megawatts to a state, the whole state. Some states are like 5 million, some are 6 million. States like Lagos are even more than 10 million. Does that make sense?
So,
in the midst of all the energy sources that we have.
So there's two questions that will spring out of that this morning. First of all, the question of, did we make a wrong move by privatizing the power sector in Nigeria? Because at the time it looked like the best option for us to be able to get better hands on the job, but it looks like the privatization of the sector has failed. And if you come from the back end also, why are we failing at our power generation quota? The president has recently said, okay, let us bring it down, devolutionize the power. States should be able to generate power. How soon do you even think that states governors are going to be able to get on board on that? So privatization, was it a wrong move? And, why are we not even able to generate enough power in the country with all these resources that you've even enumerated?
Thank you very much for that question. So the question is in two parts. The first question is, given the current infrastructure that we have and the privatization efforts that have happened, why is the power output not increasing? I will analyze that. There are reasons for that. And then the second question is that with the signing of the Electricity Act by Mr. President, what is the role of the subnational government, states and local governments, in this whole sector? So if we go to the first one, for clarity of our viewers, for those who may not know, the electricity value chain is in 3 stages. You first generate the electricity, then you transmit it. Transmission is carrying the electricity from where it's being generated to where it's going to be used. So if you have a power plant at Egbin in Lagos that is generating electricity using gas, you take that electricity from Egbin to Abuja, you have to take it through transmission lines. Transmission lines will be the big poles, high tension wires you see running kilometers on. And then when the electricity arrives the point of usage, distribution then takes it and sends the electricity into premises like buildings or homes or offices. So that is the value chain. Why is the privatization not working? Number one, generation was privatized, I would say correctly or better than the rest of the other segments, because generation was privatized to real business people. The Tony Elumelus, the Otedolas, that I know that if they are not hampered, they will put money in and expand the generation capacity. Transmission was not privatized at all, and that is the problem. While distribution was privatized, but the privatization was not done correctly. But the privatization was not done to real power players. The way we privatize telecoms to real telecoms companies like the MTNs and the Etisalas and the Airtels. But in Nigeria, the distribution companies were handed over to politically exposed persons who don't have what it takes to run a power company. So why is transmission a bottleneck? Transmission is a bottleneck because if you generate, transmission must have the capacity to carry what you are generating. And if transmission does not have the capacity to carry what you are transmitting, you cannot generate it. So the Otedolas and the Tony Elumelus cannot put money to expand generation because transmission is unable to carry it. Distribution cannot give you power that transmission does not give them. Why is transmission still at where it is? Because the government is sitting on it. And this government does not have money. And I mean, the federal government doesn't have money to put in, because for you to expand that network, you're talking about billions of dollars. And remember that the Nigerian government, I will call the Nigerian government bankrupt. You know, when you are living on loans, let's not forget that we've been hearing that the central bank printed over 30 trillion for Nigerian federal government to survive. So that is not a government that is going to have money to put into transmission, to expand the transmission network. So what's the solution? The solution is simple. President Tinubu should just hand over transmission to the private sector, to privatize it as well. Either by commercialization or privatization, whichever, let the private sector come in with their money, their expertise and their technology and their experience to increase that network. And I know that if transmission capacity is expanded, generation will do better, because I know the people in generation, I believe that they have what it takes to increase generation. And then the president needs to look into distribution. The distribution licensing, like I said, was given to the wrong people. Okay. So it's either the president will force their hands to enter into technical partnerships with power sector players to deal with the distribution, or the president should just simply take away the licenses from them and do another licensing round. Yeah.
So something I'm going to ask is, in your suggestions, in your field of expertise, are these things that you usually, as I would say like a colloquium of experts, do you suggest this to the federal government, saying this one to succeeded, here there is a failure line, here there is success, if you do this it will be better? Are these suggestions that experts like yourself make available to the federal government or the presidency? Are they privy to this kinds of quality breakdown of the activities in the sector?
Well, our role as experts and public affairs analysts is to put our views in the public space, with the hope that either the president or his ministers or their handlers are able to hear these things and take them to the appropriate quarters. I don't have access to the presidency, but I can tell you that I was at Aso Rock, I was at the villa at a conference about 2 years or so ago, and I made the same views in the presence of everybody. I don't think it's lack of knowledge that is the problem of Nigerian leaders. I think Nigerian leaders simply need courage to be able to take the right decisions for Nigerians. To say, I am going to bury my personal interest, I'm going to bury my political interest, I'm going to bury any other interest that is surrounding me, and let me just get this job done for Nigerians. I think that is what's needed, because our leaders travel elsewhere in the world. They know that when they go elsewhere, electricity is 24/7, it doesn't blink. So that on that alone should be a point where they will say, how can we get electricity 24/7 without blinking in Nigeria? And then from there they will begin to, I want to talk about the power sources that we have. We have gas. We're a gas nation. And gas is contributing 70% of electricity generation globally as we speak. Unfortunately, we are flaring our gas instead of channeling the gas into power generation. That is a definite thing that the president needs to tackle immediately, to say, why are you flaring gas, causing environmental damage, when this gas can be piped into power sector and be generating power for us? But aside from gas, we have numerous other alternative sources of energy. The the sun shines in Nigeria, pure sunshine, 8 to 10 hours per day, which is solar energy. We have wind. We have hydro. There's no place in Nigeria where there's no river within a kilometer or two. If you dam that river, it will provide you hydro electricity. It will provide you irrigation for agriculture. It will provide you pipeable water. It will provide you even a source of tourism, and fishing. All those things can happen without damming. So with all those sources, now that takes me to the point you made about how the states can come in. Yes, before the Electricity Act was signed, by President
Tinubu, so just before we get into the Electricity Act, we'd like to bring on another guest just to pick his mind alongside you. We've been joined by Barrister Clifford Thomas, who is a legal practitioner and activist, and one who has spoken so much about the electricity sector. Good morning, Barrister Clifford. Welcome to Rise and Shine.
Hey, good morning, Rise and Shine.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Good to have you on the show this morning. All right.
Yeah, it's nice to be on set this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. So Barrister, let's start with you before we get back to our other guests. This morning, Nigerians are talking about taking protests to the presidency. Over the course of the weekend, we saw Afenifere calling on President Ahmed Bola Tinubu to ensure the removal of the electricity hike. We're also seeing Femi Falana this morning saying that as far as the electricity hike is concerned, it is unconstitutional for the government of the country and the relevant government agency to just increase the electricity tariff. I'd like to feel your response to these new developments.
Well, unfortunately, there was no reason to hike electricity tariff. And it's such a very shameful thing that the government could be doing this to Nigerians at this very critical time. So why would they want to tariff? Generation in Nigeria is 12,300 megawatts. And the requirement we need is close to 40,000 megawatts to power household, power industries, and the rest. Incidentally, we are generating electricity at under 4,000 megawatts. You have not increased electricity generation, and you are still going ahead to increase electricity tariff. They claim that there was subsidy. There was no subsidy. It's just a very criminal way of trying to eke out more money from poor Nigerians. So it's an animal farm arrangement. So for them to say they are increasing electricity tariff, it's criminal, unconstitutional, illegal, and it is out to actually increase the sufferings of Nigerians. There's no manufacturing in this country. There's no more manufacturing. So we are only buying to eat, we're a clientele economy. Why can't they increase electricity generation before they begin to talk about putting or increasing tariffs? And the tariffs is across board. I looked at the about 40-something distribution, the areas they want to increase tariffs on for PHED coverage area. And I noticed that they are tasking both the rich and the poor. And you are not giving electricity to these people. We have electricity, in fact, for the past 2 weeks now. I have not had electricity in my area. We use solar and generator. That's what we use. So Nigerians should look for alternatives. And they have made solar very expensive. Because if they allow technical schools, our secondary schools, to produce lithium batteries and the solar panels, the thing will be everywhere and people will refer to solar energy. There's no more national grid. The national grid is collapsing on a daily basis. So why would they want to increase it when they increase tariffs when they have not increased the electricity generation? So I agree with Afenifere and I agree with Femi Falana. Aside from being unconstitutional, it is pure wickedness on the part of government. Even the coercive agents of state like the DSS personnel, police personnel, they are all suffering, all of them, apart from the ones in the higher echelon who make money through means that we cannot understand. that can actually buy diesel and power their generator 247 a week. But what about the average Nigerian? We have lived without electricity. So we'll advise them, don't pay for what you've not gotten. We'll advise Nigerians, don't pay.
So, but for right now, the tariff hike that we even hear is that they are going to be hiking the fare for band A users. People who get light upwards of 20 to maybe 24 hours a day. These are the persons that have been hiked to about 225 naira. Now, the rest of us
from 60 naira, from 66 naira.
That is your reasonable thing.
Okay, now I'm coming from a different perspective, Barrister. Femi Falana has also alleged that this is another plot by the federal government. They're making the announcement to start with the so-called Ban A, but with the intention of trickling it down to every electricity consumer in the country. Would you agree to this assertion?
Every consumer in the country has been taxed. Have you not seen the one PhD they brought out? It includes a back road, it includes areas where there are no power, where you don't have light. What do you call band A? Band A is between 18 to 22 hours a day. But how many of them even get up to 15 hours a day of electricity?
So
in my area, a back road from Ikorokubo to Ika local government, we don't have light. There are times we don't have light for upfront of 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And you are including that area to call us Band A. It is a fraudulent scheme.
Okay,
yes, I agree with President that they will extend it.
So, Barrister, what is the avenue through which Nigerians can seek redress? Because protest is brewing up to President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, but outside the protest, what legal grounds do Nigerians have? How can the civil society organizations such as yourself come in to help Nigerians get justice in situations like this?
Protest really works in Nigeria. I want to regrettably say that. You go to the courts, who own the courts? They will tell you, go to courts. Once the court makes any pronouncement, it stands, whether they are satisfied or not. The best thing is let Nigerians boycott them. Let Nigerians boycott electricity, revert to solar. I heard a girl talking about.
You have 1 minute remaining.
But in even boycotting,
how is it possible?
Yes, a lot of Nigerians cannot all afford solar. Solar is quite expensive. It's pricey. For you to even be able to have solar that powers your entire house, your ACs, your refrigerators, you're speaking the millions of naira. A lot of Nigerians can barely even pay 5,000 naira to have themselves power. What then happens in that situation?
Well, I think we lost contact with Barrister Clifford.
Yeah,
we hope to get him back. But let's get back to Nick. Just before we brought on the Barrister Clifford, Nick, we're talking about the new bill, the electricity bill that was signed into law by President Ahmed Bola Tinubu last year, which would allow for private investors and private stakeholders to come into play. But so far, it seems that the state governors, the private investors are not really up to the responsibility or picking up that responsibility as they speak. What would you say could be responsible for this delay or seeming setbacks on the part of the private investors and stakeholders?
Okay, so certain structures must be put in place for the new Electricity Act to become operational in the states. First, each state House of Assembly must enact an Electricity Act to mirror the Federal Act, which is what is called domestication of the Federal Act, number one. Number two, each state governor must then set up a regulatory framework. They need to set up the equivalent of the National Electricity Regulatory Commission at the state level to regulate the industry. And then number three, the states then have to start cutting deals with investors who will come in, either through PPP arrangements or creating the enabling environment or making very sweet deals, which will include like tax waivers and probably granting CFO to landed property and things like that. The states have to actively do all those things before the fruits of the Electricity Act will begin to be enjoyed by their states. And I think the states have to begin to do this. There is something that Nigerian leaders at all levels seem to be totally oblivious of. And that is the fact that without electricity, all their efforts to jumpstart the economy, whether at the federal, state, or local governments, are going to be in vain. If you don't give enough electricity to an economy, forget it. If anybody knows of an economy that is doing well globally at 3,000 to 4,000 megawatts to this kind of population that we have, and that economy is thriving, I have 100K to give the person. If they can bring such an example, there is nowhere in the world that you will be this energy poor and you do well. So governments must come to this realization quickly to say that electricity is no longer about tariff. It's no longer about discos. It's no longer about people stealing electricity. It's no longer about liquidity, which are the kind of things you hear the Minister of Power in Nigeria talking about as the major headache that he has. The major headache in the electricity sector in Nigeria is that we're simply not generating enough electricity. 3,000 to 4,000 megawatts is not even sufficient for one state. For one state in Nigeria, it's not even sufficient.
Nick, what I would ask you,
we come to that realization.
Okay.
Yes.
What I'll ask you is that in the face of this current administration, the Tinubu-led administration have been putting down some structures and they seem to have a body language. In how many years, in your estimation, do you think that we can, get to a point of generating enough power for Nigerians to actually consume? This is a major problem that we are facing. And with this price hike now, what do you really think that Nigerians can do? I mean, from 65 naira to 225 naira, the gap is a lot. Although, like our last, our other guest was saying, it is not just that it is band A that is being taxed. The whole country right now is being taxed for electricity.
Okay, so I wish I would have given kudos to this current government for giant strides that they are making in the electricity sector. But I have to look for where to give them those kudos. There are, moves with Siemens. Yes, but we have moves with Siemens since the government of President Buhari, and nothing came out of that. There are big ticket items that President Tinubu, if he's listening to us or his handlers are listening to us or they will listen to us, should deal with to unlock the electricity value chain and unbundle the sector. Number one, if the president invests 30 minutes of his time by asking for a meeting with all the oil companies in Nigeria, when they come, he should read the Riot Act to them and say, do not flare Nigeria's gas again. Every gas you produce in Nigeria, you must pipe it to electricity generation. If you cannot use that gas, then don't produce it. That is number one, big ticket item. Number two, big ticket item, the president should immediately hands off the transmission company of Nigeria. He recently only appointed executives for the company to keep doing the same thing that they have been doing for the past 20, 30 years, pinning us down to 3,000 megawatts. He needs to hands off that. Number three, big ticket item, the president needs to revisit the privatization of the discos, which is the distribution companies. I tell you that if the president touches on these three things that we're talking about, in this 1 year that he has been in office, if he had touched on these three things in the first month in office, electricity in Nigeria would have reached the 10, 15, 20,000 megawatts. I'm telling you frankly, this is what I know as an energy expert. The president is yet to start dealing with the big ticket items. And that is why I can't say, and I don't know where, that this government has added 1 megawatt of electricity to what was being generated before they came on board.
Okay.
And you know the problem? The problem is that the president has a 4-year mandate. The first year is the year that he should really show his hand and work his agenda. Because by the second year, the political temperature will start to rise. By the third year, it is politics, and by the fourth year, it's campaigns. So, if he's about to finish 1 year next month, and he hasn't added 1 megawatt of electricity, he hasn't done enough for us to give him commendation.
Okay. Well, it's been such an enlightening conversation with you this morning, Nick, and we'll definitely want to always have these kinds of conversation with you to understand, the activities of the power sector, especially with how what would I call fluid the sector is in Nigeria. But just before you go this morning, I'd like to ask, I always like to ask, on the part of Nigerians, what would your power advice to Nigerians at this time be? Our last caller was talking about Nigerians boycotting the power sector and opting for solar and the like, but I'm saying an average Nigerian cannot actually afford solar.
Yes, you are correct. The option of boycotting public power to opt for solar is outside the reach of a majority of Nigerians, because the solar panels, the batteries, the inverters, they don't come cheap.
They don't.
I want to give the bad news to Nigerians. And the bad news, because it's better for Nigerians to know that there is bad news, so that if they want to protest, they can protest about it to their representatives, either at the State Assembly or at the National Assembly. The bad news is that at 3,000 to 4,000 megawatts, when the government says we are going to give 20 to 24-hour power supply to some areas, once they are able to do that, and if they actually do that, there is not going to be enough power to supply to all other plants. It's impossible, because it's so small, it cannot go around. Now, the solution to this is not to boycott. The solution to this is to hold our leaders to account and actually ask them to get down to work. In Nigeria, we allow our leaders too much room to take us down to any road, even if we don't want to go that way. The people in Senegal just showed us recently how it is done. Their president wanted a third term. If it was in Nigeria, those people who are from the president's state or region will be very supportive of him to go for third term. And those who are not from his state or region will be against him. Nigerians have allowed ourselves to be polarized along ethnic, religious, and political divides. We as a people need to come together and ask questions of our leaders. There is nowhere in the developed world where we hope to get to that people boycott public power and they are using generators or solar and all of that.
Yeah.
Power is available for everybody. We must make power available for Nigerians.
Okay.
There's no way we can sit and we are watching our gas being flared as if it has no value
All right.
when we are living in darkness. That is like a farmer who, after harvesting yams, is burning the yams away, and the children are hungry, and the children aren't doing something about it. So we Nigerians must come to the realization that this situation, this past situation, is something that must be dealt with by our leaders, and we must hold their feet to fire and get them to do it for us.
All right, thank you so much.
Nobody else is coming to do it for us.
Yeah.
We have to do it ourselves.